The scandal that's rocking Montecito isn't coming from the palace. It's not another tabloid hit piece or a coordinated smear campaign. This time, the revelations about Meghan Markle's hidden past are coming from the one place she never expected, the very world that created her. And what's being uncovered about her years inside Soho House, the ultra-exclusive private members club where the elite gather behind locked doors, has left Prince Harry absolutely shocked. Not just surprised, not just disappointed, shocked to his core. Because the woman he thought he married, the humanitarian actress who captured his heart on a blind date, had an entire life before him that she never fully disclosed. A life built inside velvet-roped rooms where memberships cost fortunes, where the powerful play without scrutiny, and where a struggling cable TV actress somehow moved through circles she had no business accessing. And now, as former members, employees, and insiders finally break their silence, the truth about what Meghan really did inside Soho House is emerging, and it's nothing like the fairy tale she sold to the world. This is the story of how an actress became a duchess, not through talent or chance, but through access, connections, and a network of powerful men who positioned her perfectly to meet a prince. This is the Soho House scandal, and it's about to change everything. The first crack in Meghan's carefully constructed narrative came from an unexpected source. A former Soho House employee in Toronto who'd watched Meghan's rise from the inside and finally decided the public deserved to know the truth. This employee, speaking anonymously to protect against potential legal action, revealed something that contradicts everything Meghan has ever said about her time before Harry. Meghan didn't pay for her Soho House membership. Not in Toronto, where she filmed Suits, not in London, where she frequently traveled, not in New York or Los Angeles, where she networked aggressively. Every single membership, across every city, was complimentary, free. Now, for most people, that might not seem significant, but anyone who understands how Soho House operates knows that comped memberships aren't given to struggling actresses. They're reserved for celebrities who drive traffic, billionaires who bring prestige, or people who provide specific value to the club's operation. Meghan was none of those things when her memberships began. She was a minor actress on a cable show most people had never heard of. She had no money, no major connections, no reason why one of the world's most exclusive clubs would hand her free access worth tens of thousands of dollars annually across multiple international locations. So the question investigators are now asking, and the question that's tearing Harry apart, is simple. What did Meghan provide in exchange for those memberships? The answer, according to multiple insiders, is uncomfortable. Meghan was what they called a party curator, someone who made sure events ran smoothly, someone who knew how to keep the right people comfortable, someone who could arrange things that regular staff wouldn't or couldn't provide. She wasn't just a member enjoying the perks, she was working, facilitating, managing situations that needed discretion. Former Soho House members have started sharing stories that paint a very different picture of Meghan than the one the public knows. One member, speaking to an investigative reporter, described seeing Meghan at a private event in Toronto in 2015. The event was exclusive, high-profile guests only, the kind of gathering where phones were collected at the door and NDAs were standard. And Meghan wasn't there as a guest. She was there in what this member described as a hosting capacity, moving between groups, making introductions, ensuring certain people met certain other people. The member recalled being struck by how Meghan seemed to know everyone's preferences, who wanted privacy, who wanted attention, who needed special accommodations. She operated like someone who'd been briefed in advance, like someone whose job was to make sure the powerful people in the room had exactly what they wanted. Another member from Soho House London described a similar dynamic. At a 2014 event, they watched Meghan coordinate logistics with staff, managing VIP arrivals and departures with the kind of precision that suggested she'd done it many times before. This wasn't casual networking, this was operational control. What these testimonies reveal is that Meghan's relationship with Soho House wasn't typical. She wasn't just enjoying access to exclusive spaces. She was earning that access by providing services, by being useful to the people who controlled those spaces, by understanding that in elite circles, access is transactional. You get what you give. and Meghan, according to those who watched her operate, gave plenty. The question that Harry is now grappling with is what exactly those services included, because the Meghan who told Oprah she'd been silenced and controlled looks very different next to the Meghan who was managing exclusive events for billionaires and power players years before she ever met a prince. The scandal deepened when financial investigators started examining how Meghan maintained her lifestyle during the years she was supposedly a struggling actress. The numbers didn't add up. Meghan's salary from Suits was public knowledge. Cable TV actresses on moderately successful shows don't make millions. They make comfortable livings, but nothing that would support the lifestyle Meghan was living between 2011 and 2016. Yet during those years, Meghan traveled internationally, wore designer clothes, attended events that cost thousands just to enter, stayed in luxury accommodations, maintained residences that far exceeded what her salary could support. So where was the money coming from? Investigators identified a pattern of wealthy benefactors who seemed to fund Meghan's lifestyle, not through formal employment, not through documented transactions, but through what insiders describe as networking arrangements. One name that keeps appearing in these investigations is Ron Burkle, the billionaire investor who was deeply connected to Soho House circles, who owned yachts where elite gatherings happened away from public eyes, who had documented connections to Jeffrey Epstein's network, and who, according to sources, took a particular interest in Meghan's career development long before she had any connection to royalty. Flight records show Meghan traveled on private jets registered to Burkle's companies. Event photos place her on Burkle's yacht multiple times. Associates of Burkle confirm he was aware of Meghan and considered her a connector, someone useful for bringing together the right people at exclusive events. The relationship wasn't romantic, sources insist. It was transactional. Burkle provided access, funding, and connections. Meghan provided facilitation, discretion, and her ability to navigate high society events with charm and precision. For Burkle and others in his circle, having someone like Meghan available to manage social dynamics at private events was valuable enough to fund her lifestyle, valuable enough to ensure she remained in their orbit. And for Meghan, it was the opportunity to live far beyond her means while positioning herself in circles where she might meet someone who could change her life entirely, like a prince. The revelation that devastated Harry came from a guest list, a private Soho House event in London from 2014, 2 full years before Meghan and Harry were supposed to have met for the first time. The list, obtained by investigators going through archived club records, showed both Prince Harry and Meghan Markle in attendance. Same night, same exclusive event, same private gathering at Soho House's London location. Harry didn't remember the event. It had been one of many private functions he'd attended over the years at the invitation of friends connected to Soho House. Nothing memorable, nothing significant. Just another evening in a world where the wealthy and powerful socialized away from cameras. But for Meghan, according to people who were there, the evening was significant because she'd specifically asked to be placed on the event staff, not as a paid employee, but as a coordinator, someone helping manage the guest experience. Multiple sources confirmed that Meghan was present that night in a capacity that gave her access to guests, including Harry, while maintaining plausible deniability about being there to network. She could move through the event, interact with attendees, make impressions, all while technically being part of the operational team, rather than a guest trying to social climb. And witnesses remember seeing Meghan near Harry that evening, not speaking directly, according to most accounts, but observing, watching, positioning herself in proximity. Whether they actually spoke that night is unclear, but what's now undeniable is that Meghan had seen Harry in person in a private setting at a Soho House event 2 years before their supposed blind date. Which means when she later claimed she knew nothing about Harry before meeting him, when she said she'd never Googled him and had no real knowledge of who he was, she was being, at minimum, incomplete with the truth. She'd been in the same room with him, had observed him at close range, had access to information about his schedule, his preferences, his social circle, all while working events coordinated by Marcus Anderson, the man who would later arrange the blind date that officially brought them together. Marcus Anderson's role in this scandal cannot be overstated. As Soho House's global membership director and a personal friend of Meghan's, Marcus sat at the intersection of everything that's now being uncovered. He controlled who got memberships. He coordinated exclusive events. He had access to guest lists, schedules, and the private details of some of the world's most powerful people. And according to former colleagues, he used that access strategically. Marcus didn't just facilitate social connections, he engineered them. He understood that in elite circles, introductions are currency, and he was very, very good at making sure the right people met at the right times under the right circumstances. For Meghan, Marcus was essential. He ensured her memberships remained comped across multiple cities. He positioned her at events where she could network with people far above her social station. He introduced her to benefactors who could fund her lifestyle. And eventually, he arranged the meeting that would change her life forever, the blind date with Prince Harry. But here's what's now emerging. The blind date might not have been as blind as everyone was told. Text messages obtained by investigators show communications between Marcus and Meghan before the introduction to Harry. Messages where they discussed Harry's schedule, his recent breakups, his frustrations with royal life, his desire for someone who understood him outside the palace bubble. The messages read less like casual conversation between friends and more like strategic planning. Marcus wasn't just setting up two people he thought might get along, he was positioning Meghan, someone he'd watched workrooms for years, to meet a prince who fit a very specific profile. Someone emotionally vulnerable, someone frustrated with his family, someone looking for escape. The perfect target for someone who knew exactly how to become what people needed. And Meghan, according to these messages, understood the opportunity perfectly. She asked Marcus detailed questions about Harry's preferences, what kind of women he dated before, what he valued in relationships, what turned him off. The level of detail suggests this wasn't just nervous excitement about a first date. It was research, preparation, the kind of due diligence someone conducts when they understand they're being positioned for an opportunity they can't afford to waste. The scandal exploded into public view when a former Soho House Toronto employee gave an interview describing a conversation they'd overheard in early 2016, months before Meghan and Harry's official introduction. The employee was working a private event when they heard Meghan speaking with Marcus Anderson and another unidentified man. And Meghan said something the employee has never forgotten: "I'm going to marry Prince Harry." Not, "I hope to meet him someday," not, "wouldn't it be amazing if," said with certainty, with confidence, like someone discussing a plan rather than a fantasy. The employee didn't think much of it at the time. Celebrities and socialites say delusional things at private parties. Ambitious women have prince fantasies. It seemed like just another example of someone overestimating their own prospects. But when Meghan's engagement to Harry was announced 18 months later, the employee remembered that conversation, remembered the certainty in Meghan's voice, remembered that Marcus hadn't laughed or dismissed the statement. He'd simply nodded, as if they were discussing something already in motion. When the employee recently came forward with this account, investigators started pulling together other pieces of evidence that suggested Meghan's relationship with Harry wasn't the spontaneous romance they'd told the world. There was the vision board. Multiple sources, including people who'd been in Meghan's Toronto apartment, confirmed she had a vision board featuring photos of Princess Diana, the royal family, and, according to some accounts, Prince Harry himself. Meghan has denied this vision board existed, called it a malicious rumor, but too many independent sources have described seeing it for the story to be easily dismissed. There was the Diana perfume incident. Multiple people have confirmed that at Meghan's first meeting with Harry, she wore the specific scent that had been Princess Diana's favorite, a fragrance Harry would have recognized instantly, a scent tied to his deepest emotional memories. Meghan has claimed this was coincidence, that she happened to like that particular perfume. But people who understand psychology know that scent is the most powerful trigger of memory and emotion. And people who understand strategy know that wearing a dead mother's signature scent to meet her grieving son is either an incredible coincidence or a calculated move designed to create instant emotional connection. When all of this evidence started reaching Prince Harry, his initial reaction wasn't anger, it was confusion. For years, Harry had defended Meghan against accusations that she was calculating, manipulative, or strategically ambitious. He'd dismissed those criticisms as sexism and racism. He'd insisted that people simply couldn't accept that a strong, independent woman had captured his heart organically. But now, sitting with evidence that suggested Meghan had known about him, positioned herself to meet him, and potentially planned their relationship long before their supposed blind date, Harry was forced to question everything. The fairy tale he'd believed in started to look more like a business plan. The spontaneous romance started to resemble a coordinated operation, and the woman he'd sacrificed everything to protect started to look like someone who'd been playing a role from the very beginning. Harry confronted Meghan with the evidence. The guest lists showing they'd been at the same events before their official meeting. The financial records showing she'd been funded by wealthy benefactors. The testimony from employees describing her operational role at Soho House. The messages between her and Marcus discussing his profile before they'd supposedly met. And according to sources close to the conversation, Meghan's response was deflection. She accused Harry of listening to people who wanted to destroy her. She claimed the evidence was fabricated by palace operatives trying to break them apart. She insisted that even if she'd been at some of the same events as Harry before their blind date, she didn't remember, and it didn't matter because their real connection happened later. But Harry pressed, asked her directly about the comped memberships, about Ron Burkle, about her role facilitating events, about whether she'd known who he was before Marcus arranged their introduction. And Meghan, according to sources, became defensive, angry, turned the questioning around to make Harry the villain for doubting her, for believing their lies instead of trusting his own wife. The tactic was familiar to Harry. Meghan had used it before whenever difficult questions arose. Deflect, attack, make the questioner feel guilty for even asking. But this time, the tactic didn't work as well, because Harry wasn't relying on tabloid rumors or palace gossip. He was looking at documents, guest lists, financial records, testimony from multiple independent sources who had nothing to gain from lying. The evidence wasn't perfect. It didn't prove definitively that Meghan had targeted him or orchestrated their relationship from the beginning, but it proved enough. It proved she'd been less than truthful about her past, about how she'd maintained her lifestyle, about her relationship with Soho House, about when and how she'd first become aware of him. And for Harry, who'd given up everything based on trusting Meghan completely, those incomplete truths felt like betrayal. The palace's role in this scandal adds another layer of complexity, because it turns out the royal family knew. Not everything, but enough. When Meghan and Harry first became serious, palace security conducted background checks, standard procedure for anyone entering the royal family. And those checks flagged concerns. Meghan's comped Soho House memberships were noted, her connections to Marcus Anderson and his network were documented, her financial lifestyle relative to her income was questioned. Associations with individuals like Ron Burkle, who had known connections to problematic networks, were identified as potential security issues. All of this was compiled into a report that recommended further investigation before proceeding with wedding plans. The report suggested that Meghan's background showed patterns that warranted deeper examination, not because she'd done anything explicitly wrong, but because the discrepancies between her public story and the evidence raised questions about who she really was and who she was really connected to. But that report was buried, suppressed by senior palace officials who decided that investigating Meghan too deeply risked accusations of racism and prejudice, that in the modern era, being seen as welcoming and progressive was more important than following security protocols that might uncover uncomfortable truths. So the report was classified. Harry was never shown the findings. He was told that Meghan's background check came back clear and that there were no concerns, and he married her believing the palace had done its due diligence and found nothing problematic. Now, years later, Harry has obtained that original security report, read the concerns that were raised and ignored, seen the recommendations for further investigation that were dismissed, and he understands that his own family, the institution he was raised to trust, lied to him, kept information from him that might have changed his decision, chose institutional image over his right to know who he was marrying. The betrayal Harry feels is pointed in multiple directions. At Meghan for not being fully truthful about her past, at the palace for hiding security concerns, at Marcus Anderson for potentially orchestrating a relationship rather than facilitating an organic connection, and at himself for not asking harder questions when small inconsistencies appeared. What makes this scandal particularly explosive is timing. It's not emerging while Meghan and Harry are still working royals, when the palace might have reasons to coordinate against her. It's emerging now, after they've left, after they've built their own brand, after they've spent years claiming victimhood at the hands of a racist institution. The revelations about Soho House undermine that narrative, because if Meghan was strategically positioned to meet Harry, if she had connections to questionable networks, if she was less than truthful about her past, then maybe the palace's concerns weren't rooted in prejudice. Maybe they were rooted in legitimate questions about who she really was. Former palace officials, speaking anonymously, have confirmed that concerns about Meghan were never about her race. They were about her connections, about the people funding her lifestyle, about her relationship to individuals who'd been linked to problematic networks, about inconsistencies between what she claimed and what security discovered. But those concerns could never be aired publicly without triggering accusations of racism. So the palace stayed silent, let Meghan and Harry build their narrative about institutional prejudice, chose to be seen as potentially racist rather than reveal information that would have defended them, but exposed uncomfortable truths about Meghan's background. Now, with independent investigators uncovering the same information the palace found years ago, those officials feel vindicated. They weren't being prejudiced. They were identifying real concerns that Meghan successfully buried beneath accusations of bigotry. The Soho House scandal isn't just about Meghan's past. It's about how narratives get constructed, how accusations of racism can be weaponized to prevent legitimate questions, and how institutions can be paralyzed by fear of perception even when they have evidence worth examining. For Harry, the personal crisis is crushing. Because if even half of what's being uncovered is true, it means the last 5 years of his life were built on incomplete truths. That the woman he defended against his family might not have been the victim she claimed. That the escape from royal life she encouraged might have been her objective all along. That the blind date that changed his life might not have been blind. That the love story he believed in might have been engineered. Harry hasn't made a final decision about what these revelations mean for his marriage. He's still processing, still investigating, still trying to separate what's true from what's speculation. But the certainty he once had is gone. The absolute trust he placed in Meghan has been replaced by doubt. And doubt, once it takes root in a relationship built on leaving everything else behind, grows quickly. Sources close to the couple say the conversations in Montecito have become strained. Harry asking questions, Meghan deflecting, both of them aware that something fundamental has shifted, that the fairy tale they sold to the world is colliding with a reality that looks much more calculated than romantic. Friends of Harry say he's withdrawn, quieter, processing privately what it means to discover that the person you sacrificed everything for might not have been entirely honest about who they were or how your relationship really started. And friends of Meghan say she's furious, convinced this is a coordinated attack, that enemies are fabricating evidence to destroy her, that Harry should trust her over documents and testimony from people he's never met. But fabricated evidence doesn't usually come with guest lists, financial records, and multiple independent witnesses. And Harry, for all his flaws, understands the difference between a smear campaign and an investigation that keeps uncovering the same uncomfortable patterns. The Soho House scandal is still unfolding. More witnesses are coming forward, more documents are being examined, more connections between Meghan, Marcus Anderson, and questionable networks are being traced. And every new revelation makes the fairy tale harder to believe. This isn't about whether Meghan is a bad person, it's about whether she was honest, whether the struggling actress story was complete or carefully edited, whether her connection to Harry was organic or engineered, whether the woman who accused the royal family of racism was actually hiding legitimate concerns beneath that accusation. The answers to those questions will determine not just how history views Meghan Markle, but whether her marriage to Prince Harry survives the gap between the story they told and the truth that's now emerging. For now, Montecito is quiet, but sources say the silence is tense, the kind of quiet that comes before something breaks. Because you can only maintain a narrative for so long when evidence keeps undermining it. You can only deflect questions before people stop accepting deflection. You can only claim victimhood before people start asking if maybe, just maybe, the concerns raised against you had legitimate foundations. The Soho House scandal has uncovered Meghan Markle's hidden past, and that past looks nothing like the story she told. Not evil, not criminal, but strategic, calculated, transactional. The past of someone who understood how power works, how access is earned, and how positioning yourself in the right place at the right time can change everything. The past of someone who didn't wait for fairy tales to happen. She made them happen. And Prince Harry, discovering this years too late, is left wondering what's real. Whether the love was genuine, even if the beginning was engineered. Whether trust can be rebuilt after discovering it was built on incomplete truths. Whether the woman he married is who she claimed to be or who she needed to become to achieve her goals. Those are questions Harry will have to answer for himself, but the world is watching. Because the Soho House scandal isn't just a royal drama. It's a reminder that sometimes the stories we're told, the narratives we believe, the fairy tales we celebrate are more complicated than they appear. And sometimes, the truth only emerges when brave people decide that silence has protected the wrong people for too long.